Hello and welcome to Tell Great Stories, the podcast that looks back at some of Unbound Theatre's past projects and productions. In this episode, we're going to be looking into recent history as we discuss Unbound's output during the coronavirus pandemic. Joining me for this episode are...
Hello, I'm Dario Knight. I was the writer, director, producer of all sorts of different things during lockdown.
Hello, I am Kati. I was in a number of the different things we put on over lockdown. I played a fairy, I played a history detective, I played a security guard, many things, and a very lovesick Phoebe.
Hi, I'm Andy Shaw, and I also played many different things, including, but not limited to, Oberon and Theseus in Midsummer Night's Dream, Duke Senior and Frederick and Oliver Martext in As You Like It. I was Richard and Steve in Wildston Butterfly Sanctuary. What else was I? Lord Windermere in Windermere's Fan and Parker at the last minute. And I was also a dodo, a crab, a frog, a Cheshire cat, and a five. And Don Pedro.
And
Well
that's all we've got time for.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hull, and I didn't play that many as Andy, but I was a part of Speak the Speech once upon a time, and I helped coordinate and produce all the podcasts that you're listening to.
Brilliant. So, first question, if we go all the way back to before the pandemic really began, those last few weeks before the first lockdown, what were some of your memories of those heady times when everything was open, and what projects were underway at the time?
Well, we had a lot of things planned, I remember. I think we had, so we were doing a lot of improv stuff, and we had loads of plans to take it all sorts of places and loads of dates going in for that, and we were all ready to go to pubs and things. Remember pubs? And then, and we were going to take Sketchbook on tour, and I was manically learning a lot of lines, and we were rehearsing Shakespeare. There were lots and lots of lines, I remember that. There were lots and lots of scripts and lots of lines and lots of people saying you need to learn that by next week.
Yeah, many lines.
Yes.
I think we'd pretty much announced the whole season, hadn't we? We'd sort of said, here's all the things we're doing between now and July. And then I think we did one of them, which was Three Tall Women, which got by just by the skin of its teeth, I think a couple of days before theatres were orders to close. And then, that was it. Stop.
Because, you guys planned really far ahead, don't you? Hadn't you already organised the pantomime and all these kind of bits and pieces you had in the diary?
Yeah, I think everything up to the end of the year was sort of set, actually. And some stuff was written. I think we were about to go into rehearsals for Robin Hood because we were going to go do that in town.
Yeah.
So that had been cast, and the walking play, Laws of Time, rather, that had been cast and that was ready to go. But just before we started rehearsing, that's when lockdown happened. So yeah, there were about 3 or 4 things rehearsing. I think we're only about 2 weeks away from the improv showcase. That was going to happen. And then, probably about 8 or 9 projects that were either being cast or being written or had been booked. So, it was an almighty amount of work we were doing.
Yeah, I just remember there's a big kind of air of uncertainty in the lead up to it, and this kind of impending doom, and kind of ignoring it and going, nah, this won't amount to anything. We'll just, it'll be over in a couple of weeks and we'll be back to normal. But there was kind of like a sense of just carry on regardless and hope that we can do. But then some casts started to isolate. I remember Joe didn't come in for a few rehearsals for Midsummer Night's Dream and As You Like It. And then I think a few others as well. So it started to make things a bit difficult. And then I remember some of the rehearsals we were doing with the skeleton crew, we were having to sort of not touch each other and keep our distance. And it was all a bit weird. Like, how can we work this way? This is kind of a weird new way of trying to work. Very unnatural to not touch each other on a stage.
I also remember sort of thinking, I hope there isn't a lockdown during the week of the show, without sort of realising that, no, actually, if there is a lockdown, it's going to be of the year of the show.
But oh no, we might have to reschedule that performance.
Yes. Cool. So obviously moving on to then, theatres were all ordered to close and we couldn't carry on with the normal project. So, Dario, tell us sort of about how the Keep Telling Stories season started and what were some of the first projects to get going with that?
Well, there was this one almightily strange week between theatres and pubs and I think possibly some shops being ordered to close on it was a Monday night, and then the following Monday is when they announced the first lockdown. So there's this 1 week where we couldn't open to the public and we couldn't have any rehearsals, but I was still at Queen's Park and the staff were there. And I remember that week like a heart attack because we spent the entire time sort of frantically rescheduling the whole spring season at Queen's Park, which we just announced and the brochure had come back from the printers and everything. And we had no idea when we'd reopen or how far ahead to postpone things. And the phones were ringing constantly because we had customers phoning up saying, is this thing I booked in July going to happen? And we were going, well, I don't know, as if we had any specialist knowledge. And then in amongst that kind of mountain of admin of contacting customers and tutors and bands and all the actors in Unbound, we kind of had to work out what Queen's Park and by extension what Unbound were going to be now that the building was closed and we couldn't actually come in. So we had to work bloody quickly to come up with something, and I think within a few days we launched the Live Creatively campaign through Queen's Park, which was all about people sharing their creative projects online as this kind of digital creative community. And Unbound's contribution was the Keep Telling Story season, which started the morning after they announced theatres had to close. So I think within a few hours, Erica, yourself, Gareth, Matt, Lara, Steph, John, Angela had all gotten in touch with me saying, right, so what do you need us to do? Or, how about we do this? I've got an idea to keep us busy. And by the end of that week, we'd started the Sonnet project. They'd been recorded. Matt and Erica were busy recording and finding actors to get involved. John and Angela were illustrating the audio sketches because we did like a series of the old Unbound sketchbook recordings from a few years ago that we put brand new drawings to. Lara was setting up Unbound on Discord, so we had a network we could use for committee meetings and rehearsals, and it kind of snowballed from there really. But it happened really fast. That's the thing that kind of fried my brain alongside the copious amounts of rescheduling. It was just how fast we got to work and how lacking in uncertainty we were that we had a job to do. It's kind of incredible, really.
So obviously two of the biggest projects that we had during the lockdown were the feature films As You Skype It and then the mini-series A Midsummer Night's Dream, our sort of replacement Shakespeare project. And Kati and Andy, you were in both of those. Talk us through the rehearsal and recording process for that and sort of how they transformed from plays to being the films that they were, and sort of what were the problems and what was really fun about it, what was different about it.
Well, much had already been rehearsed already and learned. I think we'd done a lot of learning. I think I'd learned most of my lines, so I think that part was kind of done in my mind anyway. But then it was just trying to learn a new way of working and getting on with technology. For me, technology posed as much as a solution as it was. It also created problems as well, which kind of really did slow down the whole process. And particularly when you get dropouts, the technology, you're midway through a scene and then you're going, right, Andy, are you there? And I've dropped out like 3 lines ago and frantically trying to work my way out how to get back on again. So we were all struggling with that. But also I found it's difficult when you're in a room with somebody, you can pick up on a lot of cues and things that are not necessarily audio, but it's like little looks and you understand somebody a bit better. But when you're suddenly in isolation and all you've got is a little screen, which doesn't really show up, and so you don't quite get how somebody's posing something. So it's kind of it does put you into that isolated box. You do feel like you're in a goldfish bowl to some degree.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I think my neighbours probably thought I was going a bit mad, to be honest, if they overheard what I was... But Yeah, I see. I remember it the same way. I think because I remember to start with, I think we were all quite hopeful. I think the first few rehearsals we did over Discord were line runs, if I remember. I don't think we even mapped anything out. We still had the original script, and we were just doing line runs of the things we'd already rehearsed. And then it was all a bit disappointing and a bit rubbish. And then there was that moment of, I actually I have some connection though, because I'm stuck at home. I can't go anywhere. And I get to play around with costumes and props in my own home. So it was kind of like a kid at Christmas. It was like, I get to play with stuff now.
Like David Attenborough.
Yeah, and it was, that it got kind of, that perked it up, and that made lockdown, I think, a little more bearable as well, because we had something, you had that connection with somebody else, you had that thing that we were still doing, that we were still interested in, and the IT, but also for me it was weird things like because we did it in the summer, I think I had the windows open, I kept having an ice cream van going past. We were trying to record and you guys were like, we have to do that bit again, I'm really sorry, we've got an ice cream van, I'm really sorry. But my mic dropping out or IT problems or bits and pieces like that. So it was a trying to make the best of the situation when it was a little bit disappointing to start with, but then by the end it was kind of a lifesaver, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well, because the silliness, we kind of did build up a camaraderie of, we're all in this together, apart kind of thing, but we can all just dick around on camera and, show weird animals to each other while somebody else is trying to deliver their lines. And it was just...
I forgot about that.
We're just trying to outdo each other with stupid things we could show to the camera to make other people laugh and put off the person who's actually trying to take it seriously. So it was good. It was a great way of keeping in touch with, it's a friendship group really in many ways. We all get on with each other, and so it was a great way to just kind of bring us together, but apart, but together, but apart.
Cool. And Dario, how do you go about adapting something that is clearly done as a play to be performed as such into a remote recording format that worked so well in the format?
Well, it's easier than it perhaps first appears, I think, provided you get the central premise right. I mean, with Midsummer, that was really easy because that was basically taking every single problem we'd had trying to rehearse a play via Zoom or Discord, and then just putting it into the production. So that one wasn't so tricky. Skype, it was a bit more difficult. I mean, I remember, Katie, you sent me a link around about the time we were deciding it was going to be a film rather than a play, because it was clear we weren't going to be able to get back on stage, and it was a link to another company who'd done Midsummer over Zoom.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that, and they tried to do the whole play as though they weren't all in separate rooms. So they used green screen to put themselves in a forest, and they sort of cobbled costumes together, but clearly didn't have everything they needed, and tried to act as though they were in the same room, like able to talk to one another or turn to one another or have a fight with one another. And all it kind of did was draw attention to the fact that they clearly weren't in the same room. So I knew from that really that the core premise of Skype It had to be that these characters are in a video chat room. There's no point trying to pretend otherwise. Take what you've got and fly with it. So once you've settled on that as your premise, you kind of work through the script and solve the problems fairly logically. So things like, how does Orlando post or pin his poems on trees for others to see? Well, that's Twitter. How do you stage a wrestling match? Well, that's a video game. So it's mainly logic a lot of the time, rather than necessarily the most creative way of thinking about it. Then there's just stuff that leaps out at you when you read through the script again. So there's a scene with Phoebe ignoring Silvius. He keeps trying to declare his love for her, and she keeps sort of ignoring him and stopping him. And on stage, she would just turn away from him, and not want to talk to him. Online, she'd just block him if he was pestering her. So we added a whole sequence where she keeps blocking his camera, but then he pops up in another window and starts again, and then she has to block that one, and he appears a third time, and he ends up sort of like 6 of them all around the screen. So you just have to stick to that premise, really, and as long as you keep the internal logic of the setup consistent, it's not that difficult to figure out how to adapt it. And actually, it was a lot of fun coming up with how do you have like there's a point where Orlando gets attacked by a lion quite randomly. So how on earth do you do that when they're in a video chat room? And it just ended up being a Trojan virus hiding underneath a picture of a lion. There's a thing that cuts his camera feed. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and a more open question: what were some of the cast sort of favourite bits from the additions to the scripts, either from Skype It or Mizuma?
I did really like the extra scenes that Dario put in, the little bits in between a Mizuma night stream. Like you said, the bits that, because it was a reflection of all the things that had happened while we were rehearsing, basically.
Yeah.
Lots of, like we said, lots of people going, I can't hear you. Can you move? Sit down. Just sit down. I can't see you either. All this kind of stuff. And it was
Which scene are we doing?
Yeah, what page are we on? Oh, it's not in my script. No, it's 38 in yours. No, it's 28 in mine. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. So I really enjoyed that bit of it, to be honest.
Yeah. I kind of like just the whole concept of having different chat rooms as well that set your scene. I mean, I think that it's a simple thing, but it really did bring life to it as well. So we weren't just in a Zoom call; we were in themed chat rooms, so you know that there's going to be certain people who like that kind of thing going into that room, so they're there for a reason. It's not took away that kind of what's the word?
It makes it a bit less static, doesn't it? It's sort of
static.
There's a slightly more visually dynamic, and that was one of the things we kind of cracked in the edit, was that you just change the background image to a castle or different bits of the forest, and it really helped with the whole idea that it's a new scene.
But even, I remember you used emojis and things in one bit. I remember lots of used them popping up. That looked really good. What bit? That was one of the sort of romantic-y bits, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's a few. The big one was when Touchstone is raging at, is it William, I think the character's name is? Basically a rival for the affections of Audrey, and he has this sort of a meltdown, actually, the way Dan played it. But he just screams about the ways he's going to kill and maim this person. And every time he mentions something about, I can't remember the actual script, but, whether it's by whip or by bastinado or by the sword or whatever it was, a little emoji would pop up until the screen was filled with them. And then he just, I remember Dan's performance, he just burst out crying at the end. He kind of like collapsed in tears. And so all the emojis turned into little crying emojis. But that was a good fun one to do.
Yeah.
There's other little camera tricks as well. The one that when I watched it back a little while ago, the one that really made me laugh was it's another Audrey one where Mickey, I forget what Touchstone says to her, something like, are you ready for the wedding? And Audrey says, oh yes I am, puts her hand over the camera, takes it away, and she's in a wedding dress.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really
I love
good.
that fast cut. That was good fun.
But I think, and also, normally when we're doing these things, you don't get to see them. You don't get to watch yourself back unless maybe you're lucky enough that someone might have recorded it. And with that, it was very much a case of we were doing it in your own little house, and then you took it away and did loads of editing with it and added little bits and pieces, and you could watch it back and go, oh, that's what everyone else was doing, because we couldn't see them when we were recording it. You're just looking at your own face.
It was incredible, because no one could see each other when we recorded it either. The way we had to work, we were on a call on Discord so that everyone could hear one another, but because everyone kind of had one camera, they could only use the camera to record. It wouldn't let you record and stream off the same camera. So the incredible thing, particularly in the edit, was how well things like reactions worked. And that is such a testament to you guys, that when there'd be a funny line or a big dramatic moment, everyone's reactions were so good, even though you couldn't see one another. It was a kind of incredible thing to watch coming together in the edit. It was a tough one to do because it was a technical challenge, but it was good fun. And say in the edit, it was incredible watching some of the stuff come together, as if you could have actually seen what you were doing, or what each other were doing, I should say.
And my absolute favourite thing, I think, from the whole project was that music video in the fields of Dan.
You thoroughly enjoyed that.
How many times did you have to listen to that song when you edited it, Katie?
Oh my God. I think I had it on repeat for about 3 hours. It was just horrific. Just horrific. Amazing. And then he kept saying, can I see it? I was like, I'm not listening to it again.
That was one of those weird ones with the editing, because we got it and then we kind of went, it's not really like a punchline, because it is a really odd, even in the original play, it's just a really odd random song kind of before the big ending. So you're sort of going, oh, I wonder how it's going to resolve, and then there's a song. And then when we did it, we kind of went, oh, it doesn't sort of have a payoff at the end. And so we went back into the recordings and found loads of outtakes of B, basically I think between takes playing with her phone. I don't think she kind of twigged that the camera was still rolling, so we managed to put that in. It looked like she was watching the thing on her phone. So I mean, that been quite funny. Sort of even B's outtakes were comedy gold.
Yeah, it looked really good. It looked like you'd asked her to do it deliberately, just the way she was like, "Oh God."
Yeah, we did a test originally.
Outtakes.
Yeah, we did a test originally with to see if it would work. We did it with Jo when she's playing Jaquis, and it's the scene with the deer when the deer's been slaughtered. And she had such this kind of like really stern, unhappy look, and we dropped that in just to see what it would look like, and it was so funny. Just as the music video got more and more stupid, just the sheer look of like like she looked so annoyed at having to watch this. But it didn't really work in the context of the play, because Jaquis is meant to find Touchstone brilliantly funny, so it didn't work. We had to use Beatrice instead, but luckily Beatrice had many little outtakes of her looking unimpressed.
I'm sure she was thinking of something else. I'm sure she was.
No, I mean, to be fair, a lot of it was actually taken from other scenes. So if you're really eagle-eyed, you'll be able to spot where most of it is from another scene. Yeah. It was only the stuff when she was on her phone that we took that I don't think she knew about.
and then the ultimate punchline, of course, when the video's over, she clicks unlike.
Dislike. Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
So Steph, obviously you worked as a producer across several of the lockdown projects that we did. What were some of your favourite projects to work on, and how did you find coordinating all of those online projects?
I have to say my favourite ones to work on were the sonnets as an actor with that one. That was the first project we started. As Dario said, literally like the next day or the day after lockdown started. So that was really fun. And I think my favourite one to coordinate was Once Upon a Time. Just because I believe that was still fairly early in the lockdown. And everyone was, feeling quite low, missing people, and it was just quite nice to get in contact with people and try to get as many Unbound actors together that we could. And I mean, the script that Dario wrote was honestly beautiful and very fitting for the time. How it went from like a classical fairy tale into the current state of the world, and it just felt very uplifting as well. Like it had very much a message. I think Kati had this one line that still gets to me to this day, where people are like, they live not always happily, but then Kati says, but they lived, and it's just the way that she says it always gets me. And how did I find coordinating them? The majority of it was absolutely fine. I mean, I would sometimes get in contact with people, or I'd put a call out, and if anybody was available or interested, then they would get in contact. I'd give them the deadline for when the audio needed to be in, the videos, and that was it really. I'd say all these podcasts have been a bit more difficult to coordinate because it's going over. I think we've done literally every show Unbound has done by now, I think, and it's trying to get in contact with people, and because I joined Unbound in 2019, there was quite a lot of people that I never met, and yeah, trying to get everyone together and find a date and a time to do them. It was sometimes quite stressful and frustrating, not gonna lie, but the payoff from it is just nice to get everyone together and to hear their memories of those particular productions.
And general question for everyone: which lockdown projects are you most proud of, and which did you most enjoy watching or listening to?
Nobody's watched any of them.
I was going to say I was quite proud of the history detectives, but I think Dario, you're probably better at explaining that one than I am.
Yes, that came out in September last year, 2020, and it's like an interactive game. And it was the idea was brought to us by Bucks Council and the County Archives. They were doing a history festival and they wanted some sort of interactive quiz. So they had this notion. I think they even had the title History Detectives. They just didn't know what the story was. And the idea was that you played it online. There was a little clip and it directed you to different websites to go and find a particular bit of information, basically encouraging people to go and read articles about history, which is a really good idea. And so we then turned it into a little narrative with it's from the 51st century, and there's an archive and there's a data thief trying to steal stuff, so you have to go and find the information he's stolen. And then it's like one of those multiple choice click games, and it'll take you either through to a little video saying, oh, you got it wrong, or it'll progress you to the next little question or the next bit of the plot. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I liked that one. I think that, it came out pretty good. But as I said, sort of as you Skype it, seeing it after it had been edited, because obviously we didn't see any of it while we were doing it. And yeah, once upon a time, because as Steph said, because it was early on, there was a little element of, oh, I know all these people. Oh, look, they're all in their houses. That's nice. They're all still there.
I've never kept my house so tidy.
I really enjoyed watching Brian Murray's little project with you, Katie and Dan. You're probably best to explain that.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
Modern Crime, wasn't it called?
Yeah, he wanted to try, because obviously he does a lot of writing some of the sketches for you guys and things, and he wanted to try and do one like a proper sketch. So he'd written this sketch, which was kind of basically a phone conversation between a woman and a police officer saying that someone is robbing her house, but it ended up being a three-way phone conversation, because then the person robbing the house also gets access to a phone. But it was really fun, and I think we only rehearsed it about 3 times, and then Brian was trying to work out a way of recording it and all these bits and pieces. But yeah, it was quite. Again, I think it was tailor-made, like you said, Dario. It was kind of, this is definitely, we're not going to try this as in we're filming a sketch. This is about a phone conversation that we're also kind of recording.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really good fun. I like that one. That was funny.
I think I enjoyed, well, probably things I'm most proud of are anything where I get to do a silly voice and or just like a silly character maybe, but particularly the voices. And I again, for as you Skype it, I'd had fun playing the 2 different characters, the 2 brother dukes, with the sort of the good and the bad kind of thing going on. So I enjoyed playing about with those characters. But then I had like a tiny scene as Oliver Martext, and I just went for a very silly. What's his name? Noel Fielding type voice. So I go, hello, I'm Oliver Martext. And, I do enjoy being silly. Also, things like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. I get to bring out my kind of Gollum voice and use things like that. Those types of things. I just trying to find something new, and if it works, then that's the things I'm probably the most proud of. And getting a laugh out of it as well, which means it's all worthwhile.
Yeah, I think for me, I suppose the Chronomia series is the one that won the award, so that's obviously it's a big one for Erica's narration, and rightly so. Yeah, Once Upon a Time as well, probably. That was really special because it had such a big cast, and it was just nice to see them all and show how big the team was and still together. My main memory from that one was because there was something like 22 actors in it, so everyone had to send their footage in. And some people just kind of did one take, so you had 30 seconds, you just chop out each line that they'd done and then arrange them. And then others had done several takes, and then Andy had done 40 minutes of footage he sent to me.
Oh my god!
Because one of the things you find yourself kind of humbled about is that people are spending their time, in such an uncertain time. People are still giving their time to work for you. So I felt duty bound. I did watch all of it, but I did end up with a vague sort of psychosis because I'd listened to Andy saying the words to and fro so many times over and over, it sort of wouldn't leave my head. And so I honestly went to bed that night after I edited it, kind of hearing to and fro, to and fro, to and fro, kind of going around and around. I had to put music on to try and get rid of it. But it was dedication to the cause. But the great thing was about that, because some people only do one take, obviously that you've got their one reading of it. And the thing you've got to try and do is make it make sense as a full sentence, even when people are only doing a couple of words. So it was really useful that with Andy had different intonations of each line so that you could match it to the stuff either side. Because it was really weird when the footage come in. Some of it you're going to go, why have they done it like that? That's just weird. It doesn't make sense at all. And then you put it next to all the other lines and you go, oh no, it sounds like a sentence. So I remember sort of at one point thinking, this isn't going to work. This is bizarre. Everyone's just going to sound like they've never spoken before and don't understand how to deliver lines. But that again really came together in the edit. That was a really special one. I think the thing you don't appreciate is just how much of it there was, actually, because we were kind of blinkered at the time in just keeping it going and keeping stuff happening. So I look back now and I think, bloody hell, we made a feature film. There's hours and hours of stuff. So the rubbish answer is all of it, really. But the sheer quantity and quality of it is kind of staggers me now. Now there's a distance of time, you can kind of look back at something like Skype and think, that's really good. It's a really good film, regardless of whether it's a lockdown project or not, because it feels like a lifetime ago that we made it. Now that we're back and doing stuff on stage again, it's another world.
I quite liked after doing the Once Upon a Time, and after it went out, and then obviously people shared it. I shared it to everyone on the book face, and I had a few people come back saying to me, "A mighty dragon."
It was a very good reading of that line.
Yeah, I obviously enjoyed that line. So I probably went for it into the camera, "A mighty dragon," with my hands going out, which it felt it needed dramatising there.
Yeah,
particular line.
Now, of course, one of the things that we had planned to do before lockdown was announced was a 24-hour show, and there'd be absolutely no way after lockdown had been announced that we'd do something as mad as try and put on a 24-hour show during lockdown or during the time of lockdown. But of course we did it. And how did that sort of come about, Dario? And how did it have to change and evolve as the shifting landscape of what was and wasn't allowed, or what the rules were, just shifted over time?
Yes, it changed, but completely. So we'd been talking about doing it for about 6 months, 8 months before COVID happened, before lockdown happened, maybe longer than that. It was meant to be part of this trilogy of projects to celebrate Queen's Park's 40th anniversary. So we had the double Shakespeare tour, so we were going to go out with As You Like It and Midsummer Night's Dream and do one cast, 2 plays, and then do audience choice in some venues and stuff. Then there was a 24-hour show, and then there was Peter Pan at Christmas. So the 24-hour show was sort of the last survivor in terms of doing it in person. And as things began to open up in summer 2020, we thought, well, actually, maybe we could still do this, and first lockdown ended. But we do it as a live stream because we knew we couldn't really open the theatre safely at that stage, because this was before lateral flow testing was available to everyone, and certainly before the vaccine had started going out. And it seemed to be in a constant state of change, really. We knew there wasn't time to stage all of it in terms of blocking it, so it was like a full play, because there's 24 hours of it. That would take you a year to rehearse. So it was going to be largely radio style with scripts in hand and everyone stood at microphones, a bit like we used to do the old Inspector Murder recordings years ago. But then a few bits of it would be fully staged and fully blocked with costumes and props and stuff. That was the plan. But then we got into late September, and then it got to October, and the rates were growing up, and lockdown started looming. And ultimately, we did the entire thing with people seated around the theatre, and it was only a couple of days before lockdown 2 happened in November. So we, again, just by the skin of our teeth, we got into it. And it was another big test of nerve, really. It's a bit like playing chicken with a pandemic to see who gave up first. But we did get there in the end, and actually, it took a lot of pressure off to just bring it down to that podcast style approach where everyone sat down with their scripts on a little lectern, and we did it all on book, pretty much. But yeah, I remember almost every week you'd have to go in and go, okay, so, the government guidance has changed again. We've got to do 2 meters, not 1 meter. Or, okay, government guidance has changed again. We can only have this number of people on stage. And then eventually, again, as things got really pretty bad towards the end of October, we just said, look, just put everyone in chairs. They're 2 meters apart, and at least we'll be able to do it. Because I think at that stage, if we'd had to give up completely, we might have been able to do it with everyone at home. That was kind of the backup option, but that would have been very reliant on, again, however many actors we had, 25 actors. That relies on 25 internet connections being stable enough for 24 hours to get through it. So in the end, we said, look, sit down, everyone will be in the theatre, and we'll be able to do it in person. So that's how it ended up.
Yeah, I remember when we first got the understanding that probably we weren't going to be able to do that fully blocked with costumes bit, and it was a really tough decision to have to talk over and then kind of go to everyone and kind of say, we're going to have to pare this back to just that podcast style version. But everyone was really good about it, and it's just like, yep, things have changed. That's what happens in the world now. Let's get on with this new way of doing it. And really just every time we threw a curveball in terms of this has now changed, it's now working differently, everyone was just like, yep, and we're adapting, and now we're doing the new thing, and just got on with it. And that was really brilliant.
Yeah, I think there were 1 or 2 people who were quite relieved when we said you didn't have to learn bits of it because it was going to all be on book.
Me.
At this point in the podcast, we say, hello, Rob.
Cool. And everyone else, with the 24-hour show, what were your first thoughts when you heard about the project, and what was the atmosphere like during the show?
I thought you were mad. I thought I had images, because when you first said it, I didn't know much about what it was going to be. So I just had an image of you, Gareth, doing puns for about 3 hours at 1 a.m. And just,
how did you know the backup plan?
And I thought, oh God, no one can stay awake for 24 hours. That's madness. What are you doing? And then we changed it. And then, Gareth, you did it anyway. You actually stayed on stage for 24 hours.
24 hours, yep.
But, it seemed to just go through different phases, I think. People were quite excited to start with, I think. Then it was, you had that camaraderie thing, I think, because, like you said, we were all in that room together. People got quite tired, things got a little bit manic, then people just got very tired and emotional, and sort of up and down. But I went home and slept. Gareth, were you all right? Did you just go to a strange place? What happened?
Sure, I found it really strange how untired I was by the end. Like, there was a moment about halfway through it. Actually, it wasn't even about halfway through. It was after, the first... I think it was after the improv, just because even in that setting, improv is very high energy. You're absolutely knackered after doing a sort of full, even though it wasn't in front of a live audience there, it was still in front of people who were watching on the Zoom. You're always completely knackered after that. And that was only sort of, I think, about 3 hours in or something like that. And I was thinking, wow, if I'm this tired now, how on earth am I going to make it through another 19 hours of this? But then you just found you really got a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth wind on it. Every time you hit one of the new projects, one of the new sections, you just, you got all of your energy back just by, being part of it and having fun with it. So yeah, by the end, I was just buzzing. It's like weirdly enough, I couldn't get to sleep when I got back home because it's just
wow.
buzzing with energy.
See, I think you could definitely tell when new people were coming in, people who hadn't, fresh meat, if you like. New people coming, there'd be sort of a boost of energy. It would give you that lift to go, oh, yeah, keep going. They're on it. They're having fun. So it was good.
I walked in about 3:30 in the morning, I think. So I'd had an early night, so fairly good amount of sleep, and I was feeling tired, but I was waking up and then I walked in. There did seem to be kind of I think it must have been like a bit of a lull when I arrived, because I think people were already tired, having done quite a few. Well, they'd done a work day, hadn't they, by that stage? So people that had been there the whole time, I think they were just starting to flag a little bit, and I really detected that when I first got there. But then it did rise up again, and when you start getting into a new section of the show, something does kind of take over and sort of really push you forward to make it work.
I was going to say, I think sometimes it's the problems that kind of keep you energized as well, because I was watching the whole thing from home because I had to self-isolate, so I wasn't there, sadly, but I was watching it in real time on a Zoom link that Stefan had set up, because the actual stream was about 60 seconds delayed, so just in case something went wrong we could cut it, but I could watch it in real time. So my memories were sort of directing it remotely from home, and at one point, I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was somewhere, I think, sort of in the very late evening, early morning, we got about half an hour behind schedule. And just as I was kind of getting a bit tired, suddenly went, we've got to try and get back up to speed. What do we do? What do we cut? What do we try and speed up? So actually that gave you a bit of a sort of second wind, actually. It sort of kept me awake going, we're going to get people going to tune in the morning, and we're sort of, 3 hours behind. Luckily we sort of clawed it all back.
Yeah, I think by the time it got to near the end and we were doing the improv games, that bit for me was difficult to keep on going, and I was starting to feel like, come on, 24 hours, come on, just roll over, because I was starting to feel a bit irritable and a little bit kind of, I just I can't think straight. I can't. I remember at one point. Which game was it? The one where you just carry on the story from the previous person, and I was trying to listen to Alistair, and I was next in line, but I was across the room, so I was struggling to hear him, and I couldn't quite hear what he was saying. And then Gareth goes, and switch, and my mouth just went. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know what it sounded like, and then he's like, no, you're out. So I thought, and I actually felt a tiny bit of irritation at that point, more in myself, in that I had failed to continue the game because my brain was failing at that point. But I sat back, had a word with myself. I thought, it's not important. Just just take it, and did a little pretend dying back in my chair just to show people actually it's all a bit of fun. But yeah, there was kind of that. Okay, I wonder how many other people are feeling the same kind of thing as me right now, because it's been a long day.
Yeah. And I mean, I was quite lucky because we did one of the last few things we did. We had Much Ado About Nothing and Lady Windermere's Fan. And in both of those, the character I was playing got quite emotional and upset. And I was like, I genuinely am really tired. This is not difficult. So it worked really well.
Emily said that because she played the mock turtle in the second part of Alice in Wonderland. And so she got to, cry a lot. And afterwards, I just remember her turning to me and going, that felt really good.
Really therapeutic.
Yeah.
Bless her.
Right. And I think that brings us to our final question, which is, now that theatre projects are back up and running, how do you look back on the lockdown project? Are there any that you'd like to revisit and follow up on? And also sort of, looking to the future, what are you looking forward to working on going forwards?
Well, I think I looking back on it, I think we made it into quite a good opportunity, because I know a lot of places just closed and they didn't have any output really. They just, there was nothing coming out from them at all. They just didn't have the people there to be able to carry on. And we were really lucky that sort of Unbound kept going and kept putting these projects out, and the sheer number of things, especially with the 24-hour show, I got to be part of things, so many different things, just because it was 24 hours worth. So, I don't know how many, God, like I remember having about 3 folders with scripts in just for that one thing, which would never be able to happen in a normal year. So I think there were a lot of, it was a good opportunity. There were a lot of positives, and it got me to, I got to try out a lot of things that I would never have been able to do. I remember, Steph did Alice in Wonderland. I got to be the Queen of Hearts. I remember terrifying my poor little dog because I had to do that Queen of Hearts speech and scream at people for about 10 minutes. But I like the fact that Unbound do a variety of things. So I'm looking forward to them being back to normal and rehearsals, really, just being in a room with someone else, not just talking to myself in my spare room. That will be nice. I'm looking forward to that bit.
I'm looking forward to being able to look back on how we've had to work in this strange way, but sort of take some learnings from that onto our sort of more regular performances in front of actual people kind of thing, and the normal rehearsals with people that you can touch and have proper blocking with. And I think it does give you a kind of a better perspective really on kind of how lucky we are to have that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much we can all grow as individuals and as a group.
Yeah, I think for me, I won't miss online rehearsals. I'm very glad that we're now kind of back in person doing that. But there's a lot that that we can take forward from all the online and audio things. We've learned a lot that we can put into and grow in the future. So I'm really looking forward to being back in front of a live audience, but I'm also quite excited to see what this kind of lockdown experience does for the company. And I think right now I'm most looking forward to Panto, because the Snow Queen was my very first one, and I absolutely loved it, and was gutted when Peter Pan couldn't go on, because I just adore the story of Peter Pan. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for Sleeping Beauty this year, and for there being 2 casts.
I am slightly scared that we're now going to see 2 years of purely COVID-based theatre about plays about people living through COVID.
They're being written as we speak.
Oh, I know they are.
Yeah. There will be none at Unbound, we can assure you.
Yay!
Faithful listeners.
This one's called Isolation.
I mean, someone's writing. Probably Jimmy McGovern is writing a 6-part series for the BBC called Lockdown.
Yeah.
In which people are very miserable in lockdown, beating each other up.
God.
And someone's doing a film about Chris Whitty called The Briefing.
Who would play him?
It's probably Benedict Cumberbatch, let's be honest.
Okay.
It's bound to be him, or Tom Hiddleston or someone like that. And something about Dominic Cummings as well. There'll be like a 3-part series about the rise and fall of Dominic Cummings.
Oh yeah, that's definitely coming out.
Called King of the Castle or something like that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds like you two are writing that one.
I think in terms of things to revisit, History Detectives actually would be fun to go back to, because there's loads you can do with that, because obviously history is a very wide canvas indeed, and it would be interesting to see what we do when we weren't having to strictly work at home in isolation, and we could actually possibly do stuff together. So that'd be a fun one to revisit.
Yeah. Proper audio work, because you guys have got all the proper audio stuff as well, because we're just all cobbling things together with our little cameras and phones and things.
Yeah, you see what we could do at Queen's Park with all the tech that we've now accumulated, which is kind of the legacy of COVID, really, for Queen's Park and Unbound in terms of theatrical output. We've now got all this recording equipment that we didn't have before, which is brilliant. Yeah, I think going back to what I was saying earlier, I look back on it all with an awful lot of pride, and in a sense a bit of awe, because it really is a broad church of films and sketches and interactive games and sonnets. There's such a large amount of it, and such a large number of people working on it to make it happen. And I think it meant a lot to Queen's Park as well. You know, there was no department in QPAC that made more content whilst the building was closed. You know, there were not 190 days of pottery. And it did a lot for Queen's Park's profile, I think, to sort of show we could still be busy and still be creative and still make stuff. So yeah, I'm really proud that of all the projects, of the many projects and activities at Queen's Park, it was Unbound kind of leading the way in that respect. So yeah, long may it continue.
And on that thought, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you, everyone, for your thoughts and memories, and thank you, everyone, listening in for listening. If you want to see more episodes of Tell Great Stories, or indeed some of the lockdown projects that we've been talking about, then you can go to unboundtheatre.co.uk or look up at Unbound Theatre on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or SoundCloud. But for now, thank you for listening.